All right, well, let's get started. Thanks everybody for being here. I'm Jamie Myers. I'm the fleet captain at Davis Island Yacht Club this year. We put this together. in order to have an informational session to discuss implementation of ORC for the Spinnaker class for the Suncoast Boating Series next year. Dobbs Davis, who is, I'm not sure exactly what your title is, but Informational Director or whatever for ORC, was kind enough to make room in his schedule to give us this so we can have an opportunity to figure out what this ratings change may do to us and the advantages of it. We got a couple folks from guests from St. Pete Yacht Club. We got Jody on the line, Marty Kuhlman on the line, and I don't know if anybody else is, but thank you very much for coming in and supporting our efforts to figure out what's going on here. So with that very poorly worded introduction, Dobbs, I'm passing the ball to you.
Okay, thanks, Jamie. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Sound check, all good? Great. And can I share my screen? Is that okay? I have a screen share privilege.
Yeah, we're working on that right now.
Okay. Well, once that comes through, just let me know. And I'll just a few introductory remarks. I am the communication director for the Offshore Racing Congress. What is the Offshore Racing Congress? It's a organization that is been around for 50 years, actually, to develop a measurement-based rating system. The system has its roots back in 1969 when the U.S. had a system, the U.K. had a system. The two agreed to combine and work together to have a new international rating system. And those of you who are old like me remember this as the IOR. So the ORC was the organization that developed, managed, and administered the IOR rule that evolved towards the IMS rule once the technology became available to do a little better job of evaluating boat performance. The roots of the system now are all based on that VPP paradigm, where we use measurements of the boat and its sails and crew weight and several other inputs to evaluate the performance potential of the boat. This is not like PHRF, which most are familiar with, where it's an where that system looks at boat types a little bit with how they perform relative to others in their local fleet and come up with a single number handicap. Ours is very much more complex. It's more of a matrix of performance potential that the VPP sees. So there's no subjective factors that are used to tweak ratings. It's all based in calculations. Does this screen share now work? Should I give her a try? Oh, there we go. Cool. All right. I was going to just roll through. Can everybody see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I've done that introduction. The other role I play is I'm a certified measurer with U.S. Sailing. In fact, I'm the only certified measurer on the East Coast south of Newport. I'm trying to grow this system through measures. And measures are more than just people who measure boats and measure sails and come up with the data needed to create ORC certificates. But they're also great resources within local areas to answer questions, to help troubleshoot use of the system. I have a good candidate in mind for Florida, who I've worked with. He's a great guy, very knowledgeable, and certainly younger than I am. So if we get him trained up, he could be a great resource for you all, as well as South Florida. So we're working to build that base. All right, let's see if I can get this to advance. I've already explained a little bit what ORC is. And by the way, the size and scale of ORC is something much larger than anybody maybe in this country can appreciate. It's orders of magnitude larger than the other measurement-based systems. There's 10,000 certificates issued in 40 countries. In the US, it's relatively new and its most recent use. Right now, there are almost 500 certificates issued to date this year, because the Chicago Mac race and the Bayview Mac race, which have hundreds of boats, have joined in this year. But there's other established fleets around the US. In fact, the only area where we really don't have established fleets is in Southern California, but every other area of the country has ORC fleets, either for specific races or within local racing communities. In Florida, for example, there's an ORC fleet down in Miami that's been operating for several years. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about certificate options and the scoring options that the ORC system offers that you may be new to you all, and some other benefits. And then I'm going to kind of walk through what happens when you apply for a certificate. That slide, which I will make available, by the way, to anybody who wants this. I'll make sure you all get this PowerPoint. This just gives an overview of what I already said, the roots of the system historically, and I think that's pretty important to recognize, because this is not a new operation. It is a fully professional operation. Because of our size, we have traction and sustainability. We have a full-time professional staff of 7, almost 8 people, and they are VPP programmers, they're technologists, there are people like myself who do a little bit of everything. I mean, I do the communications because I'm the only native English speaker amongst the group. Our group's based literally all over the world, and we have regular meetings. We evaluate how well the system's doing. We do regular updates. It's all web-based. We, support all our fleets the best we can. But honestly, we as the organization and the rating system rely on our local partners. So the interface you're going to have with this system is not with me and not with ORC. It's going to be with US Sailing. US Sailing is the rating office that deals with certificates and customers of their certificates. I'm trying to also get more interaction between US Sailing and race managers to help them with the infrastructure of running races. We have the tools for that and are happy to provide that for race managers. And there's several examples that I'll show. But we really want US Sailing to take a much more active role, and they said they would as the system grows. The basis of our system is on what's called a VPP, so Velocity Prediction Program, and that's nothing more than a force balance equation between the driving forces that propel a boat forward through the water. So we need to know the dimensions of the rig, the dimensions of the sails. That's a balance against the drag forces. So the keel, the appendages, the prop, we need those dimensions. And this very sophisticated VPP will take this into account to predict the performance of your boat for any given wind speed and wind angle. Stability is also an important factor. How stable is the boat against, of course, heeling force. So there's well over 2,000 boat designs in our database. So it's pretty, we occasionally run into boats that we don't have any information on, but by and large, with a database as large as ours that has over 100,000 measurement records, we're going to find some boat that's similar to yours that has been measured at one time or given a certificate. So it's a very very comprehensive list of information that we do have, and that's readily accessible to any rating officer. Our principles are important. This is not something done behind a curtain. We don't have a smoke-filled room where a committee smokes cigars and decides who gets what ratings. It's science-based. Now, having said that, we do have a technical committee which is composed of yacht designers, aerodynamic experts, hydrodynamic experts, and a couple of computer programmers. Those guys, in fact, are meeting tomorrow. They meet 4 times a year, and they're meeting for the next 2 days starting tomorrow with a research agenda. They're constantly trying to find ways to improve the science and improve the VPPs. For example, as modeling of aerodynamics has changed from wind tunnel testing now to CFD, computational fluid dynamics, we're now doing simulations in the computer rather than in physical modeling. So as the technology increases, our group stays in track. We typically invest 50 to 60,000 euros a year on research and development, certainly more than any other similar organization in the planet. And we also have a feedback loop where if there are issues that our users think the system needs to address, our member national authorities, our rating offices in each country have a mechanism to provide that feedback to this organization. So it's not just an edifice that you don't have any say. There's a sort of a parliamentary access to do that. And the name Congress is part of that in our name. We have members from each nation that uses our system that are represented in this Congress that evaluates and approves changes each year. Having said that, ratings do not change. I mean, after we issue a VPP to generate ratings in the beginning of each year, it's locked in for that year, and it doesn't change. We do change it year to year, but it's small incremental improvements. I think in the last several years, there hasn't been more than a 0.5% change in ratings from year to year. Now, one thing that does possibly affect you guys and maybe of concern is that we go on a calendar year. You all, I think your racing season is September to March. Is that about right? September to April? May. Okay. So you all straddle the year. Now, that could introduce problems, but honestly, we don't see that as having been a big issue. Certainly not for the SORC races that have been using our system now for a few years. Is they'll use the previous year's certificates and ratings, through the middle of January, like up through the Fort Lauderdale Key West race or Key West Race Week. You've probably heard they're going to revive that for third week of January next year. And they'll probably use the 2021 certificates and then switch over to the new system within a week. When we make it available, new certificates can be generated quite quickly. So year changes, I think, are really not much of an issue. And with the small deltas that occur in the ratings year to year, it's unlikely that you'll see any significant differences between boats and the ratings. Even if the absolute ratings change, the deltas between boats in a fleet generally have negligible effect. So again, while you all are operating on that calendar, it's really not a problem for us to be able to accommodate that. Another big part of this is transparency. We publish everything. We don't hide anything. All of our resources are online. All certificates that are valid in the system are uploaded to the database, which everybody can get access to. There's really we publish all our rules on all our policies. It's fully transparent. That's something we really believe in. That transparency then allows the users to not only see their own certificates, but see their competitors' certificates. They can play games like, okay, what happens if I want to lengthen my spinnaker pole another foot or two? I want to increase the size of my spinnaker. I want to increase the size of my genoa. I want to decrease the size of my mainsail. What effect does that have on our rating? With the transparency of our system, You can input, we have a system to input that. You know, it's a self-service system. You don't need an expert. You can do it yourself, and you can generate a test certificate to see what the effects of your rating are. Our system is unique in that respect. There is no other system where you can have those features. And again, the professionalism. We have a full-time staff that are available for tech support. Again, not so much for the individual users. We really would like to route this through the rating office, but the resources are there to answer questions, and we continue to develop the features of the system and the products. Options on certificates. We have 2 tiers of ORC certificates. I think most of you who are on this call would probably be appropriate for the ORC Club, which is basically you don't need to have full measurements of the boat. The rating office can use sister ship data to generate a certificate. Because of the size of our database, we've got a tremendous amount of information that we can, if you give us a boat type, we're able to take you know, the rig dimensions, the displacement of the boat. What you will have to provide are sail measurement certificates. So you get, your sailmaker can provide the dimensions of your sails. And that's a bottom line requirement for all ORC certificates, and the rating office will want those. But if you do nothing else than that, then just get your sails measured and declare whatever you think in fact, you don't even have to declare a crew weight. We can give you a default. Then we can get you an ORC Club certificate. Now, those that learn the system a little better and may want to do more optimization of their rating, because in the absence of any information about your boat, we're going to choose out of our database the lightest boat with the tallest rig. Your sail dimensions are locked in because those are provided by the sailmaker. But we're going to give you, let's say, the least favorable rating for your boat type because we don't know what else you have. So the more you measure, as you get into this, the more you can provide measurements of the boat or its rig, then we can refine the rating to be more accurate and, in general, much more favorable for you. So I'll go through an example of that a little later. An ORC International certificate is sort of our highest quality, and that's where not only is the boat and the rig and the sails need to be fully measured, but the offset file, meaning that the shape of the boat has to be confirmed and verified, and there's a process for that. It turns out that that a lot of boats that are made by various boat builders over the years, guess what? They're not always built by the builder in the way the designer intended. So a shortcut to getting the information we need for our hull files involves getting information from a designer initially, and that's generally quite good and quite close and certainly suitable for club certificates. But when you really drill in deep and get to higher levels of accuracy, there's other methods needed for ORCI approval. For you all, I don't think it's relevant. ORCI certificates are only required right now at ORC championship level events. I can foresee maybe the clubs that are further up the East Coast, like New York Yacht Club, they may, in some of their events in the future, require ORCI certificates because they're at quite a high level of competitiveness. But most clubs will accept either ORCI or ORC Club. And the good news is that they're completely compatible, that the scoring options that are on both are exactly the same. And functionally, there's no difference for race managers in the ratings that are shown in each type. We also have many one design certificates that there's 22 classes, I believe, of boat types that we have confidence in. They're built to close enough tolerances that we can certify that a boat that is within the one design, within its one design class rules, we can get an ORC one design certificate without needing any boat measurements other than just a verification that the boat's in class trim and sail measurement certificates. So example would be a FAR 30, for example. You know, there's many of those in our database. We have a good handle on what those boat types were and class trim. So FAR 30s, FAR 40s, those sorts of things. We've got one design certificates. Melgus 32 is another example. So unless you've changed your boat, no measurements are needed, and we can easily get a one design certificate. There's other certificate types mentioned at the bottom of this slide, and these have to do with more specialty racing that your clubs may have. Everybody's probably seen an increase in interest in double-handed sailing. And so what we've done is made certificates available of these types that, so the same boat can have not only a full crewed certificate, a standard certificate, but at no extra charge, US Sailing can issue a double-handed certificate. And all that does is give the opportunity to get a fair rating for the boat when it only has 2 people on board rather than a full crew of 6. That difference in crew weight actually can make a significant difference in rating. So in this sense, we can, be able to have closer and more accurate ratings for a fleet of boats that are sailing double-handed. Likewise, this year we introduced non-spinnaker certificates. There's some scenarios where fleets like to have non-spinnaker ratings. And again, same boat, the same boat can have basically 3 types of certificates valid simultaneously. And there's other types that we have, super yachts, boats over 30 meters. And then we just introduced a couple of weeks ago, multi-hull. We're after 3 years of effort, we're getting close to rolling out an ORC multi-hull certificate. Right now it's focused on the big flashy gunboat type performance, cruising catamarans. But eventually with this template, we'll get to more common multi-hulls that you'll see in local fleets and quite far down the size range. So we're getting there. Hopefully that'll be a bigger rollout later this year. There's a new certificate design this year. We don't have time to go through all the features, but basically it's 4 pages. The first page is a cartoon of the boat. This drawing is done to scale. Therefore, it's quite easy to look at quickly and see that it represents your boat. If the spar is shaded like this one is, it's a carbon rig. Obviously an asymmetrical sail with a bowsprit, and all these sail drawings and even the freeboards of the boat and the basic outline of the boat is all done to scale. So it's a kind of a nice representation of your boat. And then when you look at other certificates, you can quickly recognize those boats as well at a glance. Some of the basic parameters of the boat are on page 1. It's length and beam and displacement. If down here, I don't know if you can see it, but there's stability. I don't know if is your club or is this region involved at all with much in offshore races, or is this strictly inshore racing or 90% inshore? Anybody?
We have a mixture. So we do a number of windward lewards. We have some races that go out into the Gulf. We got a race that goes down the coast, the west coast of Florida at Fort Myers. But it's all within 5, 6, 10 miles of the shore. So no true offshore.
Right. Okay. Do you ever use the offshore safety rules, the SERs, in anything other than the inshore category?
No.
No? Okay. So none, you don't use the coastal or the offshore. The reason I ask is there's a parameter down here in stability that is useful for race managers to know if a boat meets those criteria. I know certainly the SORC races, they look at that, and again, ORC certificates have that option. A boat would have to be measured for a stability test in order to get that parameter. So for example, if you're doing the Pineapple Cup, which is it Fort Lauderdale or Miami these days? Fort Lauderdale to Montego Bay.
Mm-hmm.
That's a serious offshore race. They use the offshore special regs, and they need stability index of 115 or greater. So anyway, ORC certificates have all that info. Page 2 is a summary. Well, at the top here is kind of a table of seconds per mile rated rated speeds of the boat in from 6 to 20 knots over a VMG beat up to a VMG run wind angles. So that gives a kind of a quick summary. That's useful for race managers who are setting up race courses. They want to know how fast or try to predict how quickly a fleet will go around a course they set. But this is really the table of values that is most relevant for scoring purposes. And I'll go into these in a little more detail in a moment, but this is all in page 2. Now, in the US, we have lots of different options because the feedback that we got last year is race managers wanted a lot of options. The more options you have in scoring, the better chance you have of making rating and scoring fair, particularly when you have a diverse range of boat types in a fleet. I mean, this is the whole reason for this, frankly. If everybody had, boats that were long and narrow and heavy, then you wouldn't need this system because the delta in performance between the boats would not be that great if they're all of a similar type. It's when you get these diverse boat types that we have typically in our local fleets between boats with bowsprits, asymmetric spinnakers, symmetric spinnakers, heavy, light, and so forth. That's where the VPP rule was really the right tool to get fair ratings for everybody. So those scoring options are on page 2. Page 3 in the certificates, let's see. Oh, actually, yeah, I didn't, that's not shown in this PowerPoint, but page 3 just has more details on the rig dimensions, and page 4 has more, rig dimensions and boat dimensions, inclining, stability, freeboards, and so on. Page 4 is dedicated for sales and what the sale inventory looks like. So in a certificate, you get all this information that's available for everybody to see, and it's a good record of what you have. This just shows again some of the features blown up. So this is just a little better scale for looking at this. Rated boat velocities. This is something that's useful on the first page of certificate. So this will give you kind of your predicted speeds for this boat at these wind speeds and these wind angles. Again, useful info. There's other ways to get this information, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. But at a glance, this gives you a quick idea of what the speed potential of the boat is. Scorings. Because the boat doesn't have a single number rating, and it's predicted across a range of wind speeds and wind angles, then the next challenge is to figure out what is a scoring model. What kind of race are you doing? Are you doing a windward leeward race? Are you doing a distance race? Are you doing a race where you really can't model it at all? It's going to be random wind directions and random wind speeds. I mean, the closer you can get as a race manager to modeling the race, then the better you are at being able to get fair ratings for everybody and use it in the scoring. So we offer several options, but as with everything, it ends up being popularity and what the balance is between a complicated model versus a simple model that's easier to use and understand. We do have single number rating options if that's what's needed. If the conditions are such that you can't nail it down to within a range of wind speeds and it's all over the farm, we have a single number option. This is just a graph that represents the distribution of wind speeds within the single number option, because the VPP runs from 6 knots to 20 knots of wind speed, and therefore this histogram represents the percentages of those wind speeds that's used in that single number approach. The most popular inshore racing scoring models that we found here in the US, and actually the system was developed in Holland, in the Netherlands, is what's called a triple number system. So if the race managers can segment the race into a band of either low, medium, or high wind speeds, then the ratings reflected in that can have a better chance of modeling the performance of the boat versus a single number approach, which takes all those wind speeds into account. So for races that are only an hour or two in duration, that's not a bad assumption. And often, you can use this. And this is, as I said, the most popular by far scoring system that's in the use in the US today is this triple number system. So that means the low range is modeled as the ratings are calculated for 50% 6 knots, 50% 8 knots. So basically anything below 9 knots of true wind speed, race managers can use this low range. The high range, I'll just leap over medium for a moment. High range is 14 knots and over, up to 20 knots, 25, 37, and 37.5%. So that's when, that's obviously, windy conditions. And then medium is a straddle that bridges the gap here from a little bit of low, a little bit of high, and a lot in the middle. So, and we find it, again, use of this creates really close racing and seems to have the best popularity with both the sailors and the race managers. And then the other one, so that's wind speeds. What about wind angles? Well, windward lured races are, as it sounds, they're just simply upwind, downwind course model where it's only VMG, velocity made good, angles that we're looking at. Whereas for point-to-point racing, we've got a few options. If they are not a loop course where you're sailing out and sailing back, and you have a point-to-point race, so and the wind direction is such that you could segment it into be a predominantly upwind or predominantly downwind, we have now options for that. If it can't be nailed down, then we use the all-purpose scoring model where it looks at all wind angles. And we have, again, the ability to segment that into wind speed bands if that's appropriate. So lots of options available for the race managers in being able to get fair ratings. Okay. This is just, we have this actually explained in a 2-page PDF that's posted on the US Sailing website. And these are just excerpts from that. But this is a little more detailed view of what's on page 2 of a certificate. And it shows these ratings as expressed both in time on time and time on distance. Seems from what I've seen around the US, almost everybody's using time on time. Or is that something you all are using there? Or are you time on distance, or is it a mix? Or
We use time on distance. What do I use?
Time on distance, okay. Well, and again, so that's an option here that can be used. Time on time has some people like, certainly race managers like time on time because then they don't have to measure distance and it's easier to set up a race. And then if there's any tide or current, that's not usually well, places with tide and current, they usually opt for time on time rather than time on distance. But again, it's available in both types. This is what I said earlier, the triple number segments, low, medium, and high wind speeds, available for those course types. Now, with that, what this allows the race managers to do is get a scratch sheet together of time allowances. So once you've assembled your class of boats, and this tool, by the way, is online on the ORC website, is you select the boats in your fleet, you choose which scoring model you want to use. In this case, it's a triple number, time on time, windward, leeward, low range. So a light air race around the buoys, windward, leeward orientation. And so I think I built this with these boat types. It's a kind of random variety, but it shows that with this tool, and it's an HTML file, you click on any of these buttons in HTML and it'll calculate the time allowances owed as a function of the elapsed time of the race. Now, if it were time on distance, these columns would not be time oriented, they would be distance, right? So, you know, half mile, 1 mile, 1.5, 2, or whatever segments you want. These are all these are all available to edit. But these is a quick, easy tool to gauge how you're doing relative to your competitors. And this again is something that's oftentimes of great use for both competitors and race managers. Now, nuts and bolts. What does a certificate cost? Well, U.S. sailing pricing is on this fee schedule, and it depends on the length of your boat. Club certificates are less expensive than ORCI certificates, but for boats that are in the, let's see, less than 30 feet, if you get an ORC Club new certificate, the fee is $3 a foot. And the pricing goes up according to the size of the boat. What else? And this is on the U.S. Sailing website. Now, as a promotion for getting an ORC certificate this year, we've offered every boat that gets a certificate a free speed guide. And what this is a graphic and numeric output of what the polars of the boat are. So based on the measurements that are inputted to the certificate, we can kick out this set of polars for the boat, and all these various curves and these various colors indicate where the crossovers are for the various sails that are in your inventory. What you need is for an ORC certificate is dimensions for the largest, for the mainsail, the largest headsail, the largest spinnaker, and then if you have any specialty sails like code zeros, those two are put on the certificate. And with this speed guide, you can see where those sails are most effective. This output, as I said, is given in a both graphic and tabular form, but what's really cool is by clicking a button on the HTML file, you also get it in digital form. And for those that have big boats with instruments and you know, programs like Expedition, this all provides that output. So particularly useful for distance races. And then the other output you can get is what are called target speeds. So for windward leeward racing, these are your target boat speeds, upwind and downwind, and target wind angles for these various wind speeds. So summary is this. To get certificates, you apply to U.S. Sailing. There's a form online available for that. These links will be summarized in this last page of my PowerPoint. You do need sail measurement certificates from your sailmaker, the mainsail, largest headsail, largest spinnaker, and any specialty code zeros. 95% of the boats that are around the U.S. We have in the database, so it's pretty unusual if we don't have one, and then we got to work a little extra hard to get a certificate, but it can be done. And then if you do opt for measurement, you will get a better rating, and you'll get a more accurate rating for sure. But it's not necessary. It's by all means not required. The race managers have lots of options for scoring races fairly. We can support race managers with learning how to do that and what the scenarios are. We do have actually a race management guidebook. And then all certificates, we have a transparent system. All the certificates are available online for everybody to review and have a look at. This page just summarizes both the forms needed for sail measurements, as well as the application forms on the U.S. Sailing website for getting an ORC certificate. I wanted to just take a few minutes to also just kind of show some of this in action. These are, well,
Dobbs, can you go full screen on that?
say again?
Can you go full screen on that? What you're showing?
With my, so not with this page, but with, oh, sorry, those are the scoring options. Yeah, for the browser. So you want this full screen?
Yes.
Okay. How's that? Better?
Maybe it's less worse.
Less worse. Okay. Well, this is just an example. That's Louis' website. This is the ORC homepage. Very simple URL, www.orc.org. There is a tremendous number of resources here. All of our rules are here. Rule books are published. As somebody new to the system, this will look fairly arcane, but if you are interested in diving in and seeing what our system is, we do have it all published. There's some example, there's explanations of how the measurement process works in this measurement section. You know, what we look at in hull dimensions, why we look at it, those are all explained in this measurement tab. Sales, for example. We actually have videos on how to measure sales. We invested in those resources. So that's all there. What are the what are the certificates look like? So here's that ORC Club certificate example. And you can move the cursor over each of these features on this page, and explanatory boxes will come up to tell you what's in that section and why. So that's sometimes useful. And we have actually, some people do this, they Google, the power of Google. Apply for ORC certificate. So guess what Google gives you? It doesn't get you to the US sailing page, it gets you to this page. So we have an online ORC Club application. We also, in our best efforts, try with this paragraph here, addressed to everybody in the US. Hey, if you're in the US, use this link and apply on the US sailing website. Well, guess what? People don't read. I know that's a shocking reality for everybody, but that right there, we try to deflect anybody from the US who's looking at this page to not use this form and instead go to the US sailing site. So that way the information that they provide goes directly to those that can handle it. But every week we probably get 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 of these things, because this is all, you know, has a nice box and has all the inputs here and explanations of what's needed for you to declare in your boat. And we get a lot of things submitted this way, which again is fine. We share all this, of course, with US Sailing, but frankly, if you want to do this and want it to happen faster, use the link that we have up here. Click here. And when you do that, you do get to the US Sailing website, which has what's called a JOT form, and this goes to this page, and there's various links on this ORC page on the US Sailing website. So here, where is it? New ORC, whoops, here we are. New ORC Club application. So you would click on that link, and that gets you directly to the rating office and, you know, sharing the information that you're providing. And this also has this has actually a pretty good overview of how the system works. This is a probably a more succinct summary of our system than trying to glean it all from our website. Oops, what happened? There we are. Okay. What else? Multi-hull software. Bit on our organization if you're interested in seeing that. So that's that resource. Now, I just for grins, I wanted to look up a lot of. There could be some skeptics saying, "Well, wait a minute, you know, PHRF relies on certain benchmark boats, like J35s. J35 is something that PHRF has, I guess, put a stake in the ground of those things rating. What is it, 72, something like that? I honestly don't know much about PHRF, but one of the reasons that we in our approach, we don't really like that is because there's a tremendous amount of variation in a single boat type. I'll blow this up so you can see the numbers, but based on only 2 boats measured, actually, for this J35 offset file, look at the variation in displacement, and this is measured displacement. So 4656, that's not pounds, those are kilos. All right, so what is that? 500 kilos variation. That's half a ton in just 2 boats measured in J35s. I know for a fact it's actually broader than that when you look at the larger population. So by simply saying boat type as a tag for identifying a boat, it's not really accurate. Not for these sorts of cruiser racer production boats, particularly our older ones. Similar variations we've seen in almost every production boat. Benettos, J boats, there can be really wild fluctuation, and it's not that the boat builders were bad at what they did. It's just they offered so many options on these boats. For interior options is a big one for sure, and just some variations in the build over several years. They may have changed some of the laminate schedules. There's just a whole bunch of different reasons. So what if you applied for a club certificate for a J35, your displacement without being measured is probably going to get a 4656 kilo displacement, when in fact, if you measured the boat, there could be a lot of rating out there available for you to identify a weight that's quite a bit heavier. So I just wanted to illustrate this this variation because this is quite common in production boats. Now, as the boats get sportier, so Melgus 32s, FAR 30s, these sorts of boats that were built as one designs, they show a lot less variation, and getting club certificates for them is usually pretty good, pretty solid. Particularly ones that we have ORC one design certificates for. Maybe it's useful to show that. So here are the classes of boats that you can easily get a ORC one design class certificate. Some of these are big boats, some of these are small boats. There's quite a variety. But anyway, but you don't see J105s, you don't see J35s, you won't see Beneteau first 36.7s or Beneteau first 40.7s, because again, the variations that we've seen and measured in the measurements of these boats is too great to give them a common one design class certificate. Also, if it's a boat type that we really don't know and we don't have a lot of data for, like this is a boat that I measured on Sunday in Wisconsin. It's called a Maestro 40. It's a nice cruiser racer built in Finland by a Finnish designer. And a lot of times we haven't measured a boat like this before. So, and if there isn't an opportunity to measure the boat, we'll go onto a resource like this, sailboatdata.com. The guy that runs this site has done a fabulous job of compiling a tremendous amount of information about a huge variety of production sailboats that stretches back 30, 40 years. And there's some basic parameters of the boat that are on this website that we may use for a club certificate in the absence of having measurements. So anyway, that sort of helps give you guys an insight into our process. Now, if we go back to the ORC, this corner in the ORC website up here is called Sailor Services, and this is a portal into the guts of our system and looking at certificates, getting a feel for what the ratings are. There's a free login that you can get, so you can register for a login by clicking that link. It just simply click in your email address and a password will be sent to you. Once you log in, you get to this page, and this is the Sailor Services page, and there's let's see, 140,000 measurement records in this database. And if we want to do a search for certificates, this gives you the ability, and can everybody see this okay? I can blow it up a little bit. This gives you the ability to search for boat types and see what ratings are of certain boat types, whether they're club certificates or international certificates. And you can search by country if you want. We'll do US. We can search by year if we want. So let's do this. And anybody want to give me a boat type?
S2 9.1.
S2 9.1. Uh-oh, new search. Not in the database. So in a case like this, because we know that there was an ORR certificate for this boat issued at some point in the past, we would go to US Sailing's database and grab that measurement info and use that to form the basis of an ORC certificate. So
I
how about it?
I have a question, but I don't want to jump ahead.
Sure.
Taking questions. So in the results, how big is the variation? I mean, obviously in a one rating system, you know, one number, that's it. Are we talking about a flex of, 5% up or down, depending on conditions and course? Or are we talking about 40%? I mean, how big can this get?
I'm sorry, back up a little. The variation in ratings for boats?
Right, in rating, right. I guess I'm trying to figure out, this complexity is the cost of a more accurate rating.
Correct.
But are we just fine tuning that last, 5%, or are we going to get just a massively different rating that is going to be much more fair? Like, how big is the difference?
Well, this will depend on how different are the boat types within a class. Okay, so let's see. I'm going to another one of these scratch sheets that I showed in the presentation, and I'm just grabbing some boats here that we're sailing at New York Yacht Club. So let's see. There's everything from a super fast, high-tech carbon race boat, the Dunning 44, to J122s. And here's a Sunfast 3300, or a King 40, or a Trip 40. So
well, let me see if I can articulate my question a little bit better. You talked about the J35, I think, in the past and or before, and you said that was like a 72, right? So if it was a race that had, upward leg and a downward leg, and some of it was at low wind and some of it was at high wind, would it really be as if we were simulating like a 70 and a 74, or would it be much
way more than that? So let me show you. You just using this variation of boat types in this scratch sheet, just because it's here and I've already loaded it. Let's say windward, leeward. Where are we here? And you want to do time on distance, right? That's something you guys are more familiar with than time on time. So if we do a windward leeward low and we hit this button, it generates this scratch sheet over, so sailing over this mileage on a windward leeward course in low wind conditions. The Bite is the Sunfast 3300 is the slowest boat. If I click on that, that'll give the deltas and time allowance. So, or we'll do it this way. We'll make Rigadoon the fastest boat. So they owe, let's say this J122, they owe in 2 miles, they owe them 5.5 minutes in time. Now, what happens if we use that same fleet and we go to medium wind conditions and generate, so remember that number 5.5 with the J122. So that changes in 2 miles to converge by 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's a big difference.
It's a big difference.
Hmm.
And if we went, and you'll see it explode probably if we go to high wind, because that's when this boat starts to really get going. And so if we went to triple number, windward, leeward, high, and in 2 minutes, well, not a whole lot more, but 3 minutes and 60 seconds. I guess that's the same thing as 4 minutes. But you can see that there's a considerable variation depending on the wind speed. That's why this triple number system is really quite popular when you've got this diversity of boat types. Does that help illustrate it?
It does. Thank you.
Okay.
You had mentioned you were unable to find an S2 9.1, which we have 4 of them here at our club.
Yeah.
My particular boat, which most people here in the room are familiar with, had an ORR rating in the past with a previous owner.
Right.
You said your database might be able to access that?
Yeah, so US Sailing has a database of all ORR records, certificate records, and therefore.
I have the script at home in a file I forgot to bring with me tonight. Would that be something you might be able to pull up now so that people here
No.
can review with the boat? Oh,
I cannot get access to the US Sailing
okay.
database of records with my tool here.
Okay.
But our rating officer can do that. He does have access to it. So when you apply for a rating for an S2 9.1, he would look, not having found anything in the ORC database, he would look in the ORR database, pull out that data, and be able to create a new file in the ORC system. Any other questions or thoughts about this?
Would the ORC club rating work for Key West next year?
That's a question for the organizers. To be honest, I know the organizers for sure in their first crack at hosting this event for next year would probably allow both. When they see more boats sign up, they might say, you know what, the guys in Class A, the big fast boats, they may require ORCI, but that's a race organizer question. My guess is they'll like now, and like we've had for the last 3 years or so, is organizers are trying to maximize their entries, and therefore will accept either club or ORCI. I know the SORC does both.
Very good.
You bet. And I wanted to show you all local application. The Wednesday night series here in Annapolis has lots of boats that race. in a variety of, these are all the different classes of boats. So lots of the handicap system that's used here for the all but really the slowest boats. That we do have a PHRF class, but those are usually for the slow boats. But everything else is an ORC.
So they're going-
And this is I just wanted to show you an example race on a Wednesday night race. So here's what the results output looks like in the yacht scoring system. So triple number, all purpose, meaning the race course geometry, they use the all purpose model because they couldn't, it was not aligning up to be a windward leeward. And they use the high range of the triple number. In this case around here, they use time on time, but honestly, it doesn't matter for results. And if we look at the elapsed time, so, oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry for the output being a smaller font. But in Class A or ORC1, you see a pretty big variety of boat types here between a GP26, a high-speed sport boat, Melgus 32s, FAR 30s, this cruising Gracer Cruiser XP44, more FAR 30s, J111s, there's a pretty good variety of race boats and cruiser racers. And in an hour long, if I sort of blow this up, trying to center this up here, okay. So these are the elapsed times in this column. And over what looks like to be about an hour of racing, these are the deltas in corrected time. Now, the guys that won obviously smoked everybody else. This is a full pro team, Rod Jabin, really, really good sailor and very seasoned team. They not only know the local waters, they know the boat really well. These are the reigning FAR 30 world champions. So they beat everybody by over 6 minutes in corrected time. Next boat is a FAR 30. And then less than a minute or about a minute in corrected time there. Again, that team really good. But then look at the delta here, 2 seconds. 2 seconds in corrected time between the J122 and XP44. 28 seconds later, there's a FAR 30. A little bit less than a minute there. And this is like the second race of the series. These guys are, second race of the season. So they're still getting their crew work down and they're still trying to learn things. But this kind of gives you an idea of how, with a diverse range of boat types, you can have quite close corrected time results. And this is the proof. This is what people want to see, is that somebody didn't blow everybody else away because they have some favorable rating. It's who sailed the best. Are the deltas in corrected time reasonable? Can you as a competitor say, yeah, we got fourth because you know what, we screwed up that jibe, or we had a bad kite set, or we had a poor start, or we missed that wind shift. Those are all the contributing factors to your performance on the race course. Frankly, much more so than deltas in rating, or if the course didn't line up exactly with the course model. These Wednesday night races are typically have both beats and runs and reaches. So the all-purpose model is actually often appropriate. Anyway, so and I could show you more race results like this from other regattas, but you look at this this class, and these are a big variety of boat types. First 36.7, Cape Fear 38. Those are older cruiser racer Bruce Merrick design, and with a sport boat, with this B1, that's a FAR designed boat built by Bavaria. That's 24 feet long, in a sport boat. So it's possible to be able to mix these wide variety of boat types into the same class, and using the right scoring methods, getting good tight race results after over an hour of sailing. And I think that's what has contributed, certainly in this area in Annapolis, to a big increase in the participation. here we've seen 20%. The guys at the yacht club tell me their participation rates in the local races increased 20%. So they're very happy with it. Any other questions or thoughts about this?
I've got
What?
one. What have you found? How does the time on distance versus time on time work when you have races where we end up with parking lots? And that's what we end up with a lot around.
Time on time is more, let's say, less punitive than time on distance when you've got those kinds of scenarios, for sure.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why people have really migrated toward time on time.
But what the rule there is of the method is up to the race organizer to determine when all the boats stop due to a drifting situation?
No, I mean, yes, race organizer can get creative with scoring, but you're on thin ice there. I think time on time is just less punitive than time on distance is when you have those parking lot situations. Now, I can't give you a quantitative analysis of why that is. If you like, I can get my guys out and we can go through the deltas and do the math and demonstrate that. But certainly in the UK, where they've got both variable weather and tides, right, in current situations, they've opted for time on time for years.
So you're showing us Annapolis Yacht Club races. Has CBYRA gone to ORC as well?
Other clubs in CBYRA have, yes. Yep. And by the way, it's worth noting that when we say ORR certificates, it is ORR, not ORREZ. EZ is a product that the ORA guys vended themselves. Anything with boats that have that information is not in the U.S. Sailing database because U.S. Sailing didn't issue those certificates. And frankly, there's a lot of assumptive stuff in ORREZ. They when they don't have an offset file out of the database, they can sort of use something that's close. I mean, they make a lot of shortcuts to get to where they want to be. And our standards are not are a little stronger, let's say. And the same with the ORR certificates. They've had to be on with reliable information.
So if you have a boat that you can't find that model year information in boatdata.com or anything like that,
We'll make it work. We went through a lot of this actually with the Bayview Mac race fleet. There are a lot of really old boats up there, and I've spent the last 2 months working with those guys to get good, reliable information and good certificates.
And does your measure have some type of weight to, if you crane a boat up, to actually measure the weight of the boat, or is there?
We don't need boat weight, and maybe that's worth a little explanation. If we go to here where we talk about measurement, when we the offset file, I've made reference to this. Offset file is a 3D representation of the hull and the appendages. It's within, we like to have them highly accurate if possible, typically within millimeter tolerances, 2 millimeter tolerances. And what we do as measurers is we choose points in the hull that have been identified as measurement, what's the right word? References. So here at the stern, where that red dot is, here at the bow where the green dot is, a measurer with the boat empty will measure the distance from that point down to the water plane. Well, if we know that there and that there, then using the software, we can then determine how much of the boat is below the water plane. Archimedes principle then gets us to calculate displacement because we know the volume. We also actually look at the density of the water because that's another important aspect of the flotation. So does that help answer that question? And when you do it right, this is absolutely within the tolerances of a calibrated crane scale, which is 0.5%. So it turns out that coincides with about a 2 millimeter tolerance in freeboard measurement. And that's certainly something achievable when you've got the right conditions and a good measure. So, and the other thing that gives you scale weight is just one dimension. By measuring at the bow and the stern of the boat, we get the trim angle. You know, is the boat sitting stern down? Is the boat sitting bow down? That affects the way how much boat is in the water in the stern. If it's a big, wide, flat boat, more modern designs, that has rating implications because of the wetted surface area of the boat versus, you know, a boat that's that may look like this, where it has a more rocker, it has a different hull shape, that sort of thing. Weight is only one dimensional. By doing this, we get 2 dimensions, and with the offset file, a 3rd dimension.
What about keel densities and keel compositions, like cast
Doesn't
iron
matter.
versus lead versus?
Doesn't matter, because the displacement will be whatever the density and the weight of that thing is. That'll come out in the calculations. Now, where it does come in is in a stability measurement. And when we measure stability, we do a little exercise described here, where we do an inclining test. Now, I don't like, this is the old fashioned method of putting poles out. I do these things now with a boom. Boom on one side, hang weight, boom on the other side, hang weight, measure the angles. You know the weight, you know the distance, you know the angle, therefore you can calculate riding moment and stability. So that's a stability test. And it has implications for safety because of aspects like this, you know, where the, what is that called? The limit of positive stability. So that's something the safety guys want to be aware of. Again, not relevant to you all if you're not sailing offshore, but it can be in offshore rules. And stability measurement is also something that if you do get the boat measured for stability, you will get likely a better rating, because without that input into the rating officer will choose a stability that will be stiff. If your boat is less stiff in the measurement, then it will rate slower, because the VPP will say, well, wait a minute, that boat's not very stiff, therefore it's not going to go that fast upwind.
So that begs the question, what is the cost of getting the rater out to do these measurements and rate the boat?
Good question. And I've started this discussion before with some of your group earlier. Measure, like for me, I charge $15 a foot to do a full measurement of the boat. With that comes the collation of all the sail data, the running of a test certificate to see if everything looks correct, and basically package it all. But there could be scenarios where, as a group, you guys, and I've done this before for fleets that are new, you know, we'll have a measurement palooza. You guys get your boats together, put them in measurement trim, which is empty, make them available. We choose a weekend and we knock them out one after another, and charge some nominal fee, you know, to help cover the measure costs and a little bit more, and do it on a discount deal. So that's a negotiable thing that we can do with Davis Island or St. Pete, or however you guys want to organize it.
You might be down here for a few weekends, Dobbs.
Give me a little time.
Hope you like rum.
Up to my eyeballs now. No, but I want to get this guy in. Some of you may know him. His name's Anson Mulder. He is quite good. I have very high confidence with him. He's apprenticed with me in a few measurements we did in Fort Lauderdale this past winter. He's based, most of the time he's based, I think, in Boca Raton, but anywhere, frankly, anywhere in South Florida, I think he's interested in doing this. So yeah, if we organize something for your fleet, we would just keep in touch on suitable dates. We look at the weather. What we need to have is as little wind as possible. Typically, we like to do these things early in the morning, just to keep the wind to a minimum. And that's just to have flat water and to have as accurate a measurement as possible. My goal is to get within 2 millimeters of freeboard measurements. Another thing you can do, and it's another rating benefit, is to have your mast weighed and CG'd. That is much more common in the north. I'm learning from the guys in the lakes. They tear everything down every winter, pull the rigs out of the boats, put the boats in the sheds. I mean, it's beautiful. That's why everything lasts so long up there, that and the fresh water. So during the commissioning season, the rigs are all available, and you get in there as a measurer and you measure as many as you can and knock them out. But for folks where you all are, I know you probably pull your rigs out of the boat once in a blue moon. But if you do, for maintenance reasons or other reasons, it's handy to have a measure. Use that opportunity to get both the linear measurements and the weight and CG, because the defaults that are used in the calculations will necessarily be lighter with a lower CG than what you measure. The rating benefits of that are, it depends on the boat size and type, but typically not more than a second per mile. So it's not huge, but.
Have you looked at the SAMS surveyors to see if they wanted to learn how to be?
I'm happy to train anybody and everybody who has an interest in this. So if you have some eligible candidates in your local fleet, I mean, I'd love to build the infrastructure in this country that we had 30 years ago, where there was a measurer in every fleet who was knowledgeable, had the tools, had the knowledge, had the wherewithal, had the time to know their fleet, get them measured, keep track of them. I mean, this is in my view, a very important part of growing this system in the US. So if we can organize a session in your area, please keep in mind people you think that they have to have certain qualities too. I mean, I've got advanced degrees in science, and therefore a lot of this stuff is sort of intuitive to me. You need somebody who's detail oriented and is comfortable with numbers and comfortable and handy and, knows boats. It's a skill set that is not common for everyone. Some of your sail makers like Marty, they've expressed interest, and that's great. But frankly, those guys are busy enough, right, Marty? You're busy enough with all their enterprises and sailing and with their customers that I don't want to layer on another responsibility. I'd love to find somebody locally who has this skill set, who can be, let's say, independent and available and interested, and absolutely will train him.
Well, I appreciate that very much, Dobbs. Are there any other questions from anybody on the Zoom audience?
Renewal fees, is it same as the initiation fee or not?
No, there's a discount, and I don't remember. It was up in that, if I could bring up the PowerPoint again, maybe.
Yeah, I think it was like $4 went to $3. I think it was something like that.
Yeah, it's a reduced rate. Renewal. Yeah, looks like 45 cents. Anyway, it's a discounted rate from the new certificate rate. But remember, again, with the certificate and that cost comes free speed guide, free polars, pretty good value.
What about backlash from racers or a race committee who picked the wrong models for a race, and the racers are all pissed at the race committee? I mean, so are you
Yeah.
are you finding it's harder to find volunteers for race committees because your rating is more difficult?
Excellent question. And I have certainly run into a lot of nervousness, let's call it, with race committees who are terrified of having too many options and having to make decisions. You need good, solid race managers who know their boats, who know their fleets, and we can train them on best practices. And we've got now pretty good knowledge base here in the States of folks that are getting more and more comfortable. I was so proud of my New York Yacht Club guys who didn't call me once last weekend. They flew solo. It was awesome. And they got really good races and they did it right. Now, it took them almost 2 seasons to get there. But again, there's a collective wisdom that can be imparted to race managers who can choose this. And if they get nervous about it, they can always back off to the simpler models. So there are options. Annapolis Yacht Club did that last year. They ran all their Wednesday night races on single number, all-purpose rating. They still got reasonable results. It kept people, interested. But this year, they're more comfortable with the system. And now they're able to get to the refined triple number models because now they know and they're more comfortable. And there's some nuances in the management of all that, but it's getting to be a pretty easy bridge to cross.
But to be clear, that single number system really wouldn't be all that different than PHRF.
Yes, it would. No. Because remember, you've got all purpose, which is all wind angles. And if you've got something that's windward leeward, that's specific windward leeward.
I see.
So that fact alone gets you 2 different geometries that are different.
How much support is out there for race officers if they want to contact you and get advice?
I did Zoom calls throughout the beginning of this year, numerous ones with race managers. So anytime I'm available, or basically half of our ORC staff, although really I'm the guy because I know how they can be applied here in the States. I had a meeting 2 weeks ago with the new CEO at US Sailing and said, look, you guys need to step up the game here. If you want to be involved with this sector of the sport, we not only need you to generate certificates, but we really need some leadership from you all, because I'm getting tired of carrying the ball on everything. I want those guys to be the key resource for clubs in this country to do this. And we'll develop, and they all agreed, oh yeah, that's great. But honestly, I'll end up developing it for them. We do have a race management guidebook. It hasn't been updated for 2021. I'm embarrassed to say, but that's because we've been so flat out busy getting the system rolled out in new countries. We're growing like crazy. So we'll get to it. Plus, I fight with my guys because they use a different scoring methods, and they're reluctant to put something in a guidebook that is either so complex and there's so many different options that they don't know what to recommend, or it's so simple it's not relevant. So that ends up being a cultural thing, and what we may end up developing is a race management guidebook for the US audience. Frankly, that wouldn't be that hard to do, but I want to do it with a US sailing brand on it and not just an ORC brand.
So one question I might ask is, obviously, you're a key part of this equation here in the US, and you even mentioned that you were one of the few that are native English speakers. Who would you consider your number 2 in the US? So if you get to a point,
is the rating office.
What's that?
US Sailing Rating Office.
Okay. So if you get to a point in your career where you decide to move on to something else in life, it wouldn't be that we'd be left kind of going, wow, now.
Yeah, my wife asked that too. Come on. when are you going to stop? No, I'm probably got enough energy in me for another 10 years, maybe. But no, and this is where, again, as I mentioned before, developing local measures. We gave a measurement seminar here in Annapolis last year, pre-COVID. It was early March, because we were supposed to have a world championship in Newport in September. And we, meaning ORC, funded, I mean, hell, I spent 4,000 euros organizing a 3-day seminar for measures to come from all over the US to learn this system. And the idea is with those educational development resources, we can educate the measures. The measures are, your local measure should be a good resource for not just measurement, but other aspects of the system. And we laid that out last year. Now, didn't get a lot of traction among some of the older guys up in the Great Lakes, but guess what? We're going to get new guys. Guys like Anson Mulder, he totally gets it because he's a pro sailor. So he needs to know this system from top to bottom for his clients. And that's valuable knowledge. So yes, we'll be developing more and more of this in the future. And again, we have the resources to train those that are willing. We can, I went down to Miami, I can't tell you how many times, trying to train that group. It was a bit like Teflon sometimes, but yeah, no, I'm a development guy. I'm the chair of the promotion and development committee. So what I envision is coming to you all both for measurement, but also for seminars. Get your race managers in. We'll spend a day with them, training them on the options, on the tools, on the scenarios. We'll run them through the software. I mean, hell, we have ORC scorer software, PC-based software that they can use. If yacht scoring is kind of, I have to say, yacht scoring is a standard because that system is developed to be able to grab the certificate data from the database directly and populate the ratings. But if your club is not using that system, there's other options. Any other questions or thoughts, concerns?
Going once, going twice. All right, so
Got one.
all right, oh man, I was a late bidder.
Elephant in the room. We've been on PHRF for a long time.
Yeah.
Found, somewhat balanced racing. The podium changes year on year.
Yeah.
The same boat at the top. So for regions that have moved to ORC, do you find that they straddle both systems, or do they generally make a full cutover to ORC?
Yeah, I call that rip the Band-Aid off. Some of them want to put their toe in the water and try to do dual scoring for a while. You guys can certainly take that approach if you like, but my advice would be, and I think Marty, you got to remind me, didn't we do some test certificates and run some scenarios, run some race results? Jody, I think you guys, we worked together a bit a few months ago on this, and certainly it's possible if you want to sort of reproduce old race results to look to see, hey, does it look like this makes more sense in ORC? PHRF is certainly familiar, y'all, but the only reason we're all here is because you're not completely happy with it. So how you want or consider making a transition is really almost a political decision you all need to make. One thing you could do, and what some areas have done, like for example in the Gulf Coast, Texas, at Houston, is they use ORC for their most, let's say, prestigious trophies and prestigious races, and continue to use PHRF for the casual stuff. So so there is some dual purpose here in Annapolis. I think they made basically a speed limit. Those that rate PHRF higher than X, will continue to use PHRF, and those that have PHRF ratings that are faster than X are urged to use ORC. And then but that's political decisions for you guys.
What about those boats then that are unhappy with their PHRF rating, but they are slower boats to begin with? You know,
Well,
how do you address those boats that wanted to do,
good
try a different
question.
system?
And again, that's not me addressing it. That's you guys. Those are your political decisions to make. I mean, I was on the phone this afternoon with a pal of mine who has a Grand Soleil that he's campaigning next week at Block Island Race Week. And the organizers up there, and the way they've laid out their classes, have kept ORC for the use for the fastest of the classes, and they're using PHRF for boats that I think are slower than GPH number 600 GPH, and he's not real happy with that because his PHRF rating sucks or isn't good, or there's a 15-second per mile delta, and but the organizers have decided to do that in order to attract more local boats from Eastern Long Island Sound. I'm getting hollered at for dinner.
Oh, there you go.
Hey, about time. Uh-oh, you're off.
So those are important political questions. Sure.
We're gonna go.
Okay. Those are important political decisions. I can tell you what others have done, and again, it's usually kind of a speed limit thing. You could also look at, this is more for cruiser races. You could also look at parametrics like ratios, sail area displacement ratios. Those that are lower, higher, could be in one class or the other, that sort of thing.
That's helpful. Thank you.
That's a little more complex because then you need more data to crunch.
Well, listen, Dobbs, I know from talking to you earlier, you've been up since 5:30, you're driving since 5:30, probably up earlier than that. So I don't want to keep you up too much later. I do appreciate it very, very much.